Hello, everyone, and welcome to Weekly Manga Recap here on September the 18th of 2019. I am Nick. This is Chris. Chris, how are things going for you?
It's an emotional one, Nick. I'm gonna give you a heads up. This is a very I know that I'm seen as like kind of the cool collected one, a weekly manga recap. Like you've never
Not true,
seen.
but okay.
Yeah. Well, that's how I see it. I don't want to express this as though it's torn down to my core. But let's be real. This is the end of an era. Things are never going to be the same again in virtually every single way. As a gallant young gazelle is taken down to let the next dorky young gazelle take over for him as quarterback of the New York Football Giants.
You're like, okay, so the gazelle never so much pranced as like stumbled,
He
but
kind of fell forward a couple. Hey, I never got to see the Giants win a football game live. I've only been to one game, and I thought beating the Bucs would be a sure thing. I really did. Anyways, I didn't get to see them live.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah.
But hey, well, you guys have a better record than us so far. But I did get to see Eli Manning run a touchdown in live.
Oh, God.
And there's something majestic about watching it where even from afar, you're like, is he running in slow motion? I thought that was just a filter they applied for television, but he did it. And I didn't think I'd have an emotional response to this because, you know, I don't follow the Giants the same way I used to. I don't follow a lot of things the same way I used to. But then you realize that since I followed the Giants, I never watched really, probably when I was a kid at some point, I don't remember, but I never watched a Giants football game that Eli Manning wasn't the quarterback of. So it's this weird thing where I'm like, oh, this is like the core piece and it's going away.
This is the last person that fades out when you're watching SB Nation's Collapse series.
Exactly.
God, SB Nation does so many good series.
We should just talk about SB Nation all day. And I you know, it's tough, but I'm gonna soldier through this for Eli's sake, because I bet he's out there listening. I don't have much of a reason to think so. In fact, almost everything I know about his character would say that he is very little interested in manga and certainly wouldn't waste time listening to a podcast about it. He'd probably be out there fucking making his own. But my hope is that there's a very loud bus that is following Eli around that's playing this podcast to him. And this is me saying, I'm going to be strong for you, Eli.
I'm sure that having a bus following him around going, I'll be strong for you, yeah, would be very comforting to him.
Which, it's only for the start. I'm only saying this now, and then the rest of us is going to be talking about manga stuff. So this bus is following him everywhere, and really only the first 15 minutes like had a message for him. The rest of it is completely alien, which is going to be very disorienting when he's in the bathroom, and the bus is like trying to like squeak in, and like just a speaker.
It's just down the hallway, like kind of like slowly cracking the door open.
Yeah, there's a guy.
Eli, I'll be strong for you.
There's a guy with a radio, like one of those radio attachments that he's just opening the door with his hand and just leaving it, like holding it on the inside. That way he can always be there.
It's very important that we give him no space.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Now that I've expressed where I'm at emotionally, Nick, where are you at? Because it's important to ask people this.
Well, I will say that I cannot relate to this because I have never been a fan of a football team where we've had the same quarterback for like more than 5 seasons. So this is something that I cannot relate to. I can't be, oh man, yeah, losing the same quarterback you've had since what, 2004?
Yeah.
No. Like,
is this equivalent?
Let me tell you about all the quarterbacks we've had since 2004.
Is the closest equivalent to when Mike Allstott retired, Nick?
Fuck off, Mike Allstott. Stop it.
I don't know. He's the only member of the Bucks I can name.
Well, I guess a guy like, John Lynch or something like that, when he went to the Broncos instead, it was like Jesus Christ. Or when, Warren Sapp did it. Not so much him, but like Derek Brooks when he retired.
What happened to Rondé Barber? Did he go to a different team at the end?
He just retired, I think.
So it must be like Rondé Barber, the good one of the Barber twins.
Yeah. It's amazing how even though he was the less famous, arguably less successful one, no, he was definitely the better one.
Oh, far and away. All right, we've alienated enough for our audience with football talk, I think. So,
yes. So now on to the wrestling talk.
Yeah, how did you like the Fiend's return?
That was great. Anyway, My Hero Academia. We're gonna get Bush Weekly Manga recap. We have to, if we're gonna talk about manga, we have to go straight into this because otherwise I'm going to look at the black and white panels and I'm going to remember that I've been reading Kodomo no Jigan and I'm going to start going crazy again. So and we're gonna save all of that stuff for next week because Jesus Christ, I'm not going to have made all that shit for a waste. So, My Hero Academia.
All right.
Number 243. Off to Endeavor's Agency. This chapter has a kind of weird stylized 2-page color spread with several of the Class 1A kids and what looks like a really rundown apartment.
That's called a bachelor pad, Nick. It's very sweet and cool. You just throw things around and you just say whatever.
There is a poster for a band that is seemingly called Burn the Home.
Is it a real band?
I don't know. Maybe.
All right, well,
and there is a vacuum cleaner in the ceiling. Anyway.
Does not seem to be real. Or at least
we have an opening
top search result when you search it. So that's on them. That's just poor marketing.
I don't think that they get to decide if they're the top result in Google.
Oh, you do, Nick. It's a numbers game. You just pay Google those big bucks. I watched a movie on this. It's called The Circle or something like that. I don't actually remember the name of the movie. Actually, I just watched the trailer. But in it, Tom Hanks was very evil, and I think he was going to kill that poor girl.
Anyway. It's New Year's Eve in My Hero Academia land. We had the Christmas celebration last week, so hey, it's appropriate timing. We learned a little bit that the kids do occasionally get to visit their families. And so Deku is visiting his mom and telling her about all the times that he has gotten into bodily harming trouble. And she's having a little bit of a freak out about that. But then he's like, oh, that little girl, Ari, that I've been telling you about on the phone. Well, she sent me this. There's a little letter that she wrote. Isn't that cool? She's learning to write. And there's just a little letter from her saying, like, your singing was great. Thank you, Mr. Deku. And there's a little drawing, I guess, of him. He looks more like Goku, but whatever. She's like 7. So.
Yeah, Nick, stop shading on this 7-year-old's artistic dreams.
Can't even get her holidays straight.
What a fucking idiot that Ari is. Can't draw people, can't remember holidays. Why don't we just throw her back in the trash?
Let's just give her back to overhaul. Oh, wait, we can't do that.
Well, hey, maybe we'll just find an equally evil Yakuza leader.
It'll be hard, but we'll find one.
Yeah.
So, Inko gets really emotional when she hears this. And water just comes flooding out of her eyes. And as time goes on, this just gets sillier and sillier because, like, she's like, oh, I felt that I had to protect you as your mother, and that's how I was for so long. But now seeing that look on your face, it's like, I don't have to worry anymore. And as she says that last part, we actually cut to the outside of their apartment and water's just flooding out of the window because she's crying so much. Chris, I don't know exactly at what point Inko's worrying for Deku became less of a dramatic thing and just comedic in its cartoonish silliness. But here we are now. Remember when his hero career was in jeopardy because she was really worried about him?
I had to stop and I was like, is her quirk crying huge tears or
No,
something like that? And I was like, I don't remember. I thought they established her quirk was something very stupid and mundane. But I
it's
was like,
being able to draw small objects towards herself.
oh, is it her dad? Is it the dad who can just like light a fire or something like that? Or
He
maybe
can
that was
breathe
his,
fire.
yeah. So in my mind, I was like, did she develop a new quirk to like cry copious amounts? Because this feels a lot like that Princess Peach game they made back in the 2000s where she
Oh
fought
God,
enemies
yeah.
with her emotions. And they're like, hey guys, this one's for the ladies. Have your emotions ever been so wildly out of control that you fight crime with them? Well, now you can. Princess Toadstool, everyone's favorite Nintendo damsel.
Yeah, that's right. She's not the one in danger this time. Look at her cry.
She gets irrationally upset and cries a lot and stops the enemies dead in her tracks. Get this to your daughters now so they can emulate her growing up.
Anyway, we'll reference this in the Smash game, so you can never erase the memory of it. We cut to the next day. Deku's going back to the dorms, and there's just some parting words between he and his mother. She does typical mom worrying things, and he says goodbye. And then we see that apparently, at the same time that Deku was away from the dorms, Hawks was away from the Metahuman Liberation Front, because he wanted to get some coffee, because the coffee that they make in the entire city is disgusting, apparently. Mm. Slide and Go greets him at the entrance and is scolding him, saying, "Hey, you can't just be flying off on yourself like that." And Hawks kind of just goes back with, "Well, isn't the Liberation Army all about giving people freedom?" And Slide and Go's like, "Well, I rank higher than you, Hawks, and I'm older." And Hawks is like, "All right, yes, sir." And then the fucking, what is it? I forget the guy's name, but their hacker media controlling guy comes up and is like, "What the hell? It makes you think that you're actually ranked higher than him, Slide and Go. You're completely useless to us compared to Hawks." It just completely just throws him under the bus. We find out, yeah, apparently, no, nobody was suspicious of Hawks, or if they were, at least, then they're still planning on using him because they've just stuck a whole bunch of micro communication and tracking devices all over him, and they can use them to get information on the heroes whenever he goes into places where heroes are gathered. And so the guy relates this to, you're a pawn capable of browsing the hero network and nothing more. Hawk's reach extends far deeper. And there's like an illustration of like them getting inside of a city's walls deeper and deeper. And Hawks, as the number 2 hero, is right in the center of the castle, basically. And there's a odd little exchange then between him and Hawks, because he's like, "Oh," and after we went to the trouble of stocking up on black coffee, and Hawks is like, "What can I say? Some like it sweet."
Yeah, it's that old catchphrase, Nick. That common that gotcha moment where someone says something, you're like, "Oh yeah, well, some like it sweet." Normally, it has a bit more of an application in this, because I guess the only thing you really do to make coffee sweeter is just dump sugar in it. And I have to assume there's somebody in the superhero world who could just make sugar. I mean, come on. That's like every team's got that. You usually have like the flying person, the ice guy, sugar good. So I assume the League of Villains probably has 3 or 4.
I'm sure.
Yeah. But ironically, as I think about that, I'm reminded of Sugar Man from Marvel, who has nothing even remotely sugar related about him. In fact, it almost seems like an ironic name. He's just a violent head baby.
Okay. I don't know anything about him, so.
Well, I think I gave a pretty accurate description, Nick. He's a violent.
All right.
head
Okay.
baby.
Thanks.
Now I feel like you know exactly who he is.
All right. Hawks, of course, is still communicating with the people at his that he's actually spying for, and let's see. I believe that this is actually cutting back to when he was flying with quote unquote best genius body, because he's got the duffel bag in this shot and he's not carrying a bag when we see him in the present. So he's just like, hey, he's wary of me, and my correspondence with you guys is going to be monitored. So all our communication from now on needs to be in code. So for now, figuring out where the Nomu is top priority. That's it. So it's possible that when he was saying some like it sweet, that was code, maybe. It's still an awkward phrase. Anyway.
I think he's just saying, like, I wanted sugar in my coffee, but then he gets canned coffee, and I'm like, does canned coffee have a lot of sugar in it?
I don't know. I don't know anything about coffee, Chris.
Oh man, Nick, this is the greatest conflict, the dearth of knowledge that we've ever experienced on this show. Neither of us know anything about coffee.
Do people drink it through their nose? Like
you get the coffee plant, you pull it from the ground, and you chop its roots off, and then I believe you chop them really fine, and then you steep it in some kind of overpriced machine. And I believe espresso just means you light it on fire first. That's my understanding. Is that the coffee council to call and give us information?
Yes. That's the coffee council. He's saying, like, yes, Chris is completely correct.
Oh, finally, they answered my call.
No need to conduct any further research. That is how coffee works.
Yep.
Yes, that's what they're saying.
Guys, I finally figured it out. I know what coffee is now. I'm gonna go back and listen to all the read all the chapters of Food Wars that had to do with coffee, and be like, now I get what they're talking about. That was some finely chopped coffee root.
Okay. Getting into the main point of the chapter, or at least what the chapter's title, in case the chapter should be about. Todoroki and Bakugo and Deku meet up with Endeavor for their hero course training. And Endeavor is there, and he's just, kind of in civilian garb, and he doesn't have his fire turned on, and he's just like, welcome, I'm Endeavor. Is that what you thought I was going to do, huh, you little fucking punks? that's basically what he does, because he's got this big, hi, kids, look in his face, and he's, what are you looking at me like that for? I want to just train Shoto. Screw you guys.
And this is calling back to a fear that I had as a child, Nick, where I had a somewhat estranged relationship with my father when I was younger, and I was part of the Boy Scouts. And Boy Scouts very frequently did father-son camping trips, and I can't tell you how many times I felt like every dad that I was forced to go along with thought exactly this. Like, this is supposed to be time with me and my son. Why do I have to take care of this weird kid instead? None of them ever said that out loud. They were very, very nice. But I internalized that, as all things Catholic made me do.
I'm pretty sure that if you put your kid in the Boy Scouts, that you're not going to act that way to another kid.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. I do know there were some douchebags.
All right. Good to know.
Mm-hmm.
Shoto does point out to his father, like, I mean, you did agree to this, so, quit complaining about it.
Yeah, I do like how he has a thing of like, welcome, I'm Endeavor. Is that what you thought I would say? They're like, but you just said it. You were really nice. You didn't have to merely turn it back for being mean.
I just wanted to train Shoto. And then Shoto's like, I mean, you could have just not had agreed to train the other two, but you did. So, and then Bakugo's just like, man, you're a jerk. And Bakugo is just very upfront with saying, like, I'll put up with having to deal with the two of you if it means that I get to see how the top hero operates. Just so straightforward. I am using you. And of course, Deku's really nice about it. And Endeavor kind of handles the situation pretty childishly, because when he, is leading them onward, he suddenly just like leaps off a railing and starts going on into patrol mode, running around and stuff, and they all have to follow him. So yeah, they rush off, and they end up coming across a villain pretty quickly. We do get a flashback before that shows Toshinori actually giving some advice to Bakugo and Deku after they, I guess, brought this idea to him that they would go and train with Endeavor. And he was just like, oh, yeah, sounds good. Deku did have some concerns about, his quirk training with the new quirks manifesting. But Toshinori's like, as long as you've got that unlocking visualization down, I don't expect you'll experience any more outbursts. Yes, I'm sure that's how it'll go. But then Toshinori also had to say for Bakugo, you and Endeavor are a lot alike. And I think seeing him as he is now will do you a world of good. So neither of you should pass up this chance. So there is presumably going to be, it seems as though, unlike the first time that we saw, the hero training where we cut around a bit, it seems that this might be a bit more focused, especially because, we already saw the entire class in action the first time. Also, there's a wizard guy, or a priest dude. He's got a big hat and a big white beard, and he's floating around on like bubbles, and he's very, very stereotypical in the way that he's talking.
Yeah, well, that's because he's the iconic villain Wizardo.
Yes, that's his name.
Wizardo, and we don't learn his name. How many pizza bets do I get if his name next week is Wizardo?
None.
Damn.
I'm not like opposing you on that. I was like, okay, it could be. Yeah.
All right, cool. So if it's Wizardo, I get all the credit then. And
sure,
if it's not,
yes.
Nothing changes. In fact, you have to respect me more for going out on a limb and suggesting
no.
Oh,
so, and the very last thing we see at the end of the chapter is Wizardo. Why not? Is attacking people by sending his bubble things flying at them.
That's his Wizardo bubbles.
Probably not. Hawks is watching him from up high. He's got a little like Meta Liberation. He's got the Meta Liberation Front's book in his hand. I guess he's been given required reading now that he's part of the army. So yeah, this guy's shown up, and since he's the number 2 hero, he's presumably got to take action here, even though he's busy. So there we go. It looks like Hawks and Endeavor gonna reunite once again.
Finally.
All right. This was the opening chapter of an arc. Yep. It's all right.
I'm excited to see where things go. And that's pretty much all there is to say.
Yeah. There's a lot of setup in this. Nothing in it really that makes me go, ooh, this is going to be interesting, because, we already knew most of the relevant stuff in prior chapters that gets set up in this one. So. And I guess if we just want to do one last quick check to make sure that the Crunchyroll manga didn't update, we don't have either Eden Zero or Seven Deadly Sins to talk about this week, which means the Knicks got fewer breaks this week. God damn it.
Mick, I'll recap Spirit Busters for you.
Sure. Beast Children first.
Oh, right. That's still going on.
Beast Children still going, Chris. There is so much in this chapter that makes you go, man, you had like ideas that you just didn't get to do, didn't you? There's like a thing that where one of the players who looks very, scruffy and older, says something in regards to, because Sora shows up and he's apparently the water boy for the team now. And they talk about how he's kind of gotten close to the manager, and apparently scruffy older player dude has a thing for her, I guess. And they're like, but she'd never go for you because you look like a corrupt middle-aged man. I'm like, was this guy part of the team? I guess so. They have to stop Yukito. So there is a whole thing where they explain this whole tenet of rugby play, which is that in the middle of the field, that's like the backbone. There are certain positions that can only be occupied by one person at a time. So we've got to break their backs, and that's how we'll stop Yukito. And they do this by taking advantage of the fact that our main protagonist is small, so they can, hide him from view, and then he'll burst through and with his 0.5 second burst thing in order to do it. And they generate an opening from that. It's a cool idea. Um, I'm sure that it would have been much more like satisfying to see it play out
Hmm.
if we had been given enough time with these characters to care. So,
Yeah.
but this is very much a series that's in we're wrapping things up now mode. So I'm trying to make you think that I'm good at doing manga so that Jump will give me a chance to write another one.
Yeah.
So here's some cool stuff. So Mission Yozakura family. Mission 4, Recovering the Ring. This was an odd chapter. Very low stakes in comparison to everything else that we've seen from this so far, but it is, I guess, largely a comedy series. But instead of there is an assassin who wants to kill Mutsumi, or you have to undergo hell training so that you'll be a good trainer for Mutsumi, this one is the new teacher in school is a big jerk, and she confiscated Mutsumi's ring. And it's very important that they get it back. So use all your spy abilities to break into her office. And that is what happens.
I guess this is meant to be like a cathartic thing where you're like, oh, cool, we saw main character guy learn all these skills and go through all his training, and now he gets to use it to get the upper hand on somebody who I guess you're meant to be like is just unquestionably just a dickhead, that you're just not supposed to like this person. You're supposed to be like, oh, fuck her. She's overly like judicial and she's taking shit. She's just a biatch. I don't like her. I hope she gets her comeuppance. And then she does. And there is a moment in the middle where they actually like tell a backstory that shows why he kind of takes such good care of Tayo, Mutsumi, whatever. I don't know.
Tayo was his name.
Okay. Why Tayo takes such good care of her, like it went back even a little bit. But then it ends on kind of a weird joke that she saw that she got robbed, so now she's afraid for her life. And I was like, I don't really... Is she going to be like a reoccurring character? It feels like this is just kind of a detour. And
I think that this is more getting a taste of... Because admittedly, to this point in the series, we have seen Tayo as just kind of this everyday guy who is in this bizarre situation. And if you're going to have him be Mutsumi's primary protector in the series, then he can't stay that way. So this is more, I think, establishing this is how the dynamic between the characters is going to go for the most part, where Tayo is, yes, new to the world of spies and stuff, but he has at least some core competency in regards to actually doing his job as her protector. And this is an easy mission, quote unquote, for him to show, okay, this is where he is now. He's more confident in his ability to do things. So it's just setting that up and also showing more insight into Mutsumi's character because, you know, we see the way that she would get treated and stuff because of the streak in her hair, and how Tayo has always been someone to comfort her regarding that. But it's very low stakes. Not a great, not. It's probably the worst chapter we've gotten for the series so far.
We get a tease at the end that this is like a lead up to something else. Mm-hmm. So
someone is spying on her. It's probably the next assassin.
So there's something like it's. I would be worried if this chapter just was what it was, and I was like, oh, is this going to be like a weird kind of slice of life more sort of series? But I don't think that's the direction they're going. I think this was just a detour that they wanted to get out there, which is fine.
All right. Mitama security.
All right, Nick, let's talk about Spirit Busters. So guess what? Bitches be cooking. That's the chapter title. Oh, wait, no, it's just called Cooking. Code 3 Cooking.
I had to throw a little bit of on it.
Yeah. And, as the classic Emerald used to say in the popular early 2010 bits, boom! Or bang. I don't actually remember what he used to say. Bazinga! Whatever. So, yeah, it turns out that girl has a cooking ghost with her now. And what would you know? But security guy, security guy
That's
is.
it's hilarious every time.
He does
Every
it a couple
time.
of times. He shows up to help out, and he's like, "Ooh, it looks like
Smells like bad spirits.
yeah, the
Yeah.
curry you're making looks like shit."
And also smells like bad cooking. Yeah.
Yeah, the curry you're making looks like shit, and I do like that. That's the only thing the ghost says. He's just like, "Ew, ew, looks gross, ew." Um, and then they make a couple jokes where he shoots a spirit bomb, and the ghost just eats it, and it actually kind of likes it because it's really tasty. So he makes like a spirit bomb curry, and the ghost eats
He actually summons the spirit bomb again and like
chops it up.
washes it off like an ingredient and chops it up, which is okay. That's a little funny. I didn't laugh, but I was like, okay, fine. Yeah.
I like to think Manga was like sitting back and waiting for your opinion, and he was just like, he had his hands up to his lips. He was like, God, I hope it made him laugh. And you just
Ironically, like a cooking TV series, you have the bit where there's just the dramatic music playing as the judges.
Oh, I hope he likes it. I hope Gordon Ramsay doesn't call me 7 expletives in a row.
Craftsmanship is it's good. Yeah.
Oh, I hope there is
vegetables are well cooked. The meat's not done. Look at that. Look at that.
Oh, balls.
Still raw in the middle.
I hope my dessert doesn't have a soggy bottom. That's a Great British Bake Off reference for everybody out there. Boom. Here's new episodes on Netflix. I'm not sponsored, but I just want them to succeed.
I don't think they need your help, Chris.
But
They've been going for like 20 seasons.
I need to feel important. This is how I do it. So the ghost eats it, and it's really good. So its cheeks fall off, and it's kind of cute. And then it just like kind of leaves. It like is like good food, and then sort of evaporates into the air. And security guy makes good food, and he's like, it would be a shame if we wasted yours, that you spent 4 hours apparently cooking. So I'll try it. Eats a bite and dies. And that's the series.
Yeah, I mean, as far as we're concerned, it's over.
Well, hold on, Nick. We had to...
No.
The very official audience. Spirit Busters, Mitama Security. It requires 2 votes to continue on in the magazine. First vote, Nick.
No.
All right, well, that's not very suspenseful for the audience. All right, what do I say? There's no drama to it anymore, but I would also say no, unfortunately.
No. I mean, I've had fun hating on it, but it's just, literally, for the past 2 weeks, my reaction to, when I've been opening up the chapters to read them so I can prepare notes has been, oh, God damn it, I still gotta do Mitama Security. It's the exact same as it was last week. I gotta read this series again. It's just an annoyance.
Does it help, Nick, if you find out that other series are doing far more successful that we passed over, like Yui Kamio, I think, is actually doing relatively well nowadays?
It's at least gotten to over 20 chapters.
So maybe
this
could
admittedly,
be
there was more. I mean, look, it's a stupid gag series, okay? I mean, I don't think that there's been a stupid gag series that has come up on Weekly Manga Recap that have been like, yes, that's great. So I just don't have. It's just not even worth hating. So,
well, that's fair enough, I guess. Let's move on to something way more exciting, Nick. Samurai 8, baby!
Samurai
All the way
8.
to the top.
The Tale of Hachimaru. Chapter 18. Always shop responsibly. It's like a commercial or something, like a PSA. So
it was also made very evident this week that Samurai 8 is not doing particularly well in Japan. We mentioned it before that it's not doing well in the ranking, but I guess even its volume sales weren't particularly successful, and the common consensus in Japan seems to be that a lot of people are pretty disappointed. So
considering this is Kishimoto's follow-up series.
Yeah, so a lot of people. So enjoy Samurai while you can. If you've invested a lot into this universe, pull back maybe a little.
If you're invested a lot in the universe, then the universe is gonna give you this chapter, I guess. This is a strange chapter. It's like an entirely different series all of a sudden with these two goofball thief characters. So we've got the serious guy Ryu, and then the loudmouth leader guy Haguma, whatever. He's just told Ryu to slice up everyone but the girl. So the guy Ryu turns to him and is like, "Well, thanks for everything," and he's gonna cut him. And he's like, "What are you doing? No, stop!" And he's like, "I mean, you said to slice up everyone but the girl." And he's very literal-minded. That's the joke. So.
Oh, I thought you said very liberal-minded, and I was like, I mean, I guess I don't.
Oh yeah, he's.
I don't know if he really established his feelings on things.
As he's preparing to fight them, he's like, all workers deserve a living wage. Dharma's like, hey, you focus on protecting Anne, Hashimaru, I will deal with them. And so he charges in, and then Ryu like calls out his hand right when they get close to each other. He's like, stop. And he's like, are you a male or female cat? Because he's got to make sure that Dharma's not a girl, because the guy told him not to attack any of the girls.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And Dharma does say something which I think is probably the only kind of funny line, which is he's asked, "Are you a male or female cat?" And he's like, "I am neither. I am a man," which is just so strange coming out of this little cat dude.
And it causes another big conflict of interest, because now who owns the rights? Dharma, Becky Lynch, or Ric Flair? Like, it's another hat being thrown into the ring as to who is the man.
No. Dharma just says, "I'm a man," Chris. It's still fine.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Definite article. It's very specific in this situation.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. You don't remember, any of the times where they were like, Randy Savage was like, "I am a macho man." Mm-hmm. And it's like, no. That would have a much different effect. Then he'd be having 70s music follow him around. No. He's the macho man. Then, oh yeah, and all that stuff. Yeah. Completely different.
Remember Macho Man had a rap career?
Yes, I do.
It's good times.
Yes.
I mean, not really, but...
I wish that he had done another.
I hope it was another album primarily dunking all over Hulk Hogan.
Be a man, Hogan.
Like, it's like, Macho Man, it's time for your second album. His producer's very British. And he's like, what you gonna do for your next big hits? Because he's one of the Beatles. This is Paul McCartney. He's like, oi, no, hold on. They're like, oi, Macho Man, what are you gonna do for your next big record? And he's
I'm gonna talk about how much I hate Hulk Hogan.
Oh, did you want to try anything a little bit different there, man?
Oh, I hate Hulk Hogan. It's the only thing. That's my muse. Yeah.
Oh, well, perhaps maybe we could get Migos in to feature on one of your songs.
Who?
Migos. They're not big now, presumably when this record is being recorded in 2008 or so. But they're gonna be huge in the future.
I don't even know what you're referencing.
Migos, Nick. God, you're so out of touch.
I am. Ryu actually
had... Nick. Wait, he's like, when we get some Post Malone on. At that point, he's pre-Malone, though. Boom. Got it.
It's a lame fucking joke.
That was what Paul McCartney was known for. That's what they always used to say about him.
Yeah, he does lame fucking jokes.
His terrible puns. Oh, jeez.
So Ryu does this thing where he Darth Mauls it. He has a blade coming out of each side of his handle bone. So that catches Dharma off guard a little bit. But they're still at an advantage because they're inside of Dharma's ship, and it's like, hey, this is my key holder, so I've got you. And so Ryu cuts their way out of there, and they try to escape. And as Dharma pursues after them, he gets this audio notification that says, your purchases at Ball Sector 052 Shaft Station are returning an error with your credit. You cannot complete your payment. Please confirm your remaining balance or you will be held here for up to 72 hours. So Dharma's got to like deal with this, and he's like, give me transaction details. And it's like, well, there's Ann, grocery store, ingredients, 20,000 yen. Hachimaru, clothing store, clothing, 15,000 yen. Textile store, clothing. And Dharma's like, wait a minute, a textile store. He's fighting the guy while he's basically disputing a credit card charge. And so it turns out that somehow Hachimaru accidentally spent 17 million yen, which is the equivalent of nearly $200,000 at this textile store. As a result, Dharma has $1 left in his bank account. So a drink that Dharma got earlier didn't go through, and the vendor is now yelling up at him while he's having this sword fight. And then Hachimaru calls him on a video call that comes out of his helmet, and he's like, Master, you seem distracted. Focus on the fight. And then he gets chopped in the helmet. It's so strange because it just suddenly gets really fucking silly, this entire series. Hachimaru's dad died like 3 weeks ago.
Hey, gotta get over it, all right?
Yeah, it's funny now. It's funny. So Dharma scolds Hachimaru and explodes with anger. Energy comes out from all around him, knocks the thieves away. The call goes out. The entire freaking ship shakes. And it turns out that Hachimaru actually made an honest mistake because, he spent all of his time inside. He doesn't really have any sense of money, and he got the zeros confused. So he brought this little piece of fabric that cost, a lot of money when he thought it would only be about $20. So he apologizes, and I was like, all right, I guess you made an honest mistake. But why did you buy a roll of gold embroidered fabric? And Hachimaru was like, oh, I wanted to give it to Anne as a present because, you ripped up your sash when you were trying to stop my dad's bleeding earlier. So I wanted, to pay that back for you. And you've just been wearing it like that the entire time since we've been gone. And it's actually kind of sweet. Uh-huh. It's like, oh, you wanted to give her a present, and because she sacrificed something for him. So she's like, I mean, hey, let's go return to the store. I really appreciate the gesture though. So, the thieves are in cuffs because I guess the burst of energy did take them out. And Loudmouth Thief Guy is like, hey, it seems like you're strapped for cash, but you're pretty strong and we've got some special information for someone like you and it could be worth your while. And he's basically says that there's a planet that there's going to have a festival for rogues and ruffians, a no holds barred fighting event, and the winner gets a chance to fight against the festival's sponsor, and if you win that fight you get 1 billion yen. And Dharma was like, oh, 1 billion, and Hachimaru was like, wow, I guess you're kind of a greedy asshole, master. So
I mean, he just had all of his life savings blown by one kid.
They're gonna return it to get it back.
Yeah, but still, if somebody's like, hey, this thing you're already absurdly good at? If you do it, you could make $10 million or whatever. I'd be like, oh, okay. And then I would just start like exploding cum everywhere. Like it would be violent and out of control. Like,
it's good to know what Dharma's expression here indicates when he's like,
yeah, it's okay. That's how it goes. This is science.
So yeah, they're like, okay, I guess we'll go there because they also learn that the sponsor of the tournament, the person that they have to fight if they win the tournament, holds a key to some legendary box or something. So, and points out that's one of the people we're looking for, I guess. So, hey, they might as well go to this tournament because one of the people that they're looking for is there, and they can get a whole ton of funds to continue their journey. So, might as well. So that's the end of the chapter. I didn't hate this chapter. I thought it was actually, for the most part, quite entertaining. I was just completely taken aback through most of my time, both times reading it, because, God, it's just so silly. And I didn't expect the series to take this very flippant tone so soon after doing its dramatic stuff. It's a bit of a whiplash.
I actually find it pretty funny, and I'm kind of glad that the series could have a little bit of silliness to it. I'm still not entirely sold on these two new characters, where I kind of like Ryu. The other character just isn't leaving much of an impression. I think it's just his design isn't particularly memorable for someone who I feel like is supposed to be like kind of this Han Solo rogue type, like a slick talker, and he feels pretty forgettable. But I actually do like this chapter for the most part. It's a little silly, but that's fine. I think this series is maybe still trying to find its tone. And if you do look at everything that happened on that planet earlier was kind of like a prologue, then it is, I think, okay to like try to establish a new tone going forward. And you're like, I guess this arc, maybe Hachimaru's parental figure won't die. Now, if Daruma dies like 3 chapters in from this, and you're like, yeah, it's kind of weird, but I think it's fine to reestablish.
And then 3 chapters after that, Hachimaru will be hanging out with thief guys, and they'll have a very wacky adventure on some planet somewhere together, and no mention of the dead mentor father figures is mentioned at all.
I know I read this chapter, though, originally, and I finished it because I remember the shot of the planet. I think my brain exited my body, though, midway through, because as you were describing, I was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this. I don't remember any of this. I don't remember that they were going to do a tournament or something like that. I don't remember that he bought the thing for On. I was like, everything just left my mind as I was reading it.
Yeah, I actually get that because there were a bunch of details that I had forgotten to, because all I could remember was the freak out over the overspending. Like that was the only thing I could remember, because I was like, really? Is this what the point of the chapter is? What?
All right, Nick. Let's talk about We Never Learn. Question 127. The pizza bet's face, the fateful morning, fresh and pure. So, you mentioned how in, what was it? My Hero, that we went from like Christmas to New Year's really quickly. And I was like, they would never do that, and We Never Learn. We Never Learn never cuts down time. It's always about drawing. Sometimes you have to assume 4 to 5 chapters happen in a day based on how strict the schedule seems to be. And that's what's going to happen this time, because the national exams are coming up. So
yeah, so presumably we've got like another 3 months of them studying and stuff before we actually get there.
Yep. So 10 days remain. So 10 days. So that's a lot of chapters to fill in there. Essentially what happens is...
Well, say 10 chapters.
Yeah, 10 chapters or so properly. Uega's thinking about how the national exam's coming up, and that there's a secondary exam in February or March. And he's like, oh man, it's really tough thinking about all this. It's after all on the practice exam the other day. Like, he's kind of nervous because he's worried about the practice exam scores and everything like that. He drops his results, and the principal picks him up. And he's like, Here you go. Hey, I saw the results from the practice exam. And he's like, oh, well, she's like, no, I saw yours too. And Ogata's and Takamoto's and everybody. And, after I pointed you the tutor, I thought maybe you could convince them to change their fields because you're one of their classmates. So maybe they would go along with what you said. And I apologize for that because you helped them overcome their obstacles. Their test results presumably are actually pretty good. And he's like, you've helped them work so hard to overcome things that they couldn't. And he's like, well, yeah, I'm happy about that. But, I just supported them and it felt good. they're the ones who did it, and it was over their power. You see all three of the girls are like just around the corner, kind of like blushing as he compliments them so highly. And the vice principal thinks back to Yuega's father, who was laid up in a hospital bed because he worked so hard for his students that he just got sick from it. And
Well, I don't know if that's the implication, but he was sick and he was still prioritizing them because he
Yeah.
was like still doing reviews for his students while he was supposed to be focusing on recovering.
So he's even thinking, my oldest son, he cares a lot, and you're my best friend, principal. So when he grows up, I want him to go to your school so that you can provide him the strict guidance he needs. And the principal's like, do you see? Your son grew up strong and caring, just like you. So the other girls are pretty nervous on the way back home. They're all acting a little bit weird. There's a moment where they all want to hold Yuega's hand, and they end up kind of in like one weird big group hug. And then the mother and her child, who has never seemingly gotten older. I feel like we've gone about a year in this magazine, and that child refuses to get any older. It's just like, look, Mama, they're playing the hugging game, and they have a little bit of fun. Then we skip a week.
It's a weird little note because the mother is like, "Oh, I used to be part of a harem too, and I won your dad that way."
So yeah, they skip a week. Something that seems unthinkable in this series.
I was shocked when this happened.
We cut forward the full week to the day of the national exam.
But before we cut forward, Chris, we get a study montage.
Yeah, everyone's working very hard.
Read that book, Eureka. Learn about the stuff for the test.
Make sure you don't fall. Do. Like, well, that's a weird lyric.
Getting smart now.
So yeah, Yuega like wakes up, and his parents, or his mom rather, and his siblings are like, "Hey,
that's alive again."
They're like, "Hey, go out there and do your thing. You got everything." He's like, "Yep, see you good. See you later. I'm gonna do good." So he's walking home, or he's walking to school, and he's like, "Wow, snow's pretty deep. I got to be careful not to slip. Glad I left early." And he sees a dog that has a leash on but no owner, and the dog is rather adorably about to run into traffic. And I say rather adorable because this dog's face is way too cute for the scene that's about to unfold following this. So this dog is about to leap into traffic. Yuega lunges out, grabs the dog by the leash, and pulls the dog back and kind of steadies himself on a railing. And he's like, whew, all right, thank goodness I saved this dog. Now, where do you live? But the railing is covered with snow, and the snow kind of crumbles underneath his hand, and he slips and loses his balance. And we cut over to the school as all the girls are there, and they're like, cool, hey, all right, I can't wait to see what's going on. And they're like, hey, where's Yuega? They're like, well, that's weird. Usually Yuega's like the first one here. And as Aruka's like, well, I hope he's okay, we hard cut over to Yuega, who fucking just fell down the stairs and is... I mean, they can't really show a lot of blood, but is presumably very badly injured in the falling snow.
Yeah. If you fall down a flight of stairs, you're presumed head first, no less. You're probably not doing so great. You're not doing better than you were the first time. Than you were before you fell down, I should say. And the dog is there, and he's like looking at Yuiga's hand, and it's like, oh, geez. I mean, it's weird because I don't think it's been probably a couple of months since I read, the chapter of a manga, and I have felt as distressed as I did reading the end of this chapter. Not even the end, but like, the part towards the end where you see Yuiga's hand slip and he starts to fall, and I was like, oh gosh. I was like, are you serious? Is he gonna hit his head? And I mean, the implication here, I think that probably the only thing that you're going to have to worry about is Yuiga's going to miss this important first test. Um, Presumably, what's going to happen is that this dog's owner is going to come across them. Uh, but it's very, it's distressing to see this kid who has worked as hard as he has to not just get himself ready for these tests, but his friends as well. All of a sudden, just something horrible happens, and it reminds me of when I was taking my final exams for high school, and we had to take them off location, and we kept, when you've got like 100 kids traveling for 30 minutes multiple times in the course of a month, inevitably one of the trips does not go well, and that happened for a few of us. Someone got pulled over at one point. One person didn't set their alarm properly. I put my car in reverse, in drive instead of reverse at one point, and fucked up my headlights. All this stuff happens, and you're just worried about all these things that have nothing to do with actually being mentally prepared to take a test that will, in part, determine a lot of your success in a certain point of your life. And things can just go wrong, and you don't have as much control of them. And so that brought a lot of that back for me. And also, kid fell down some stairs. It's bad.
It's a rough time. So I feel like maybe Susui was listening to us and was like, "Oh, you don't think the series' writing is very good anymore, huh? All right, well, I'm gonna push you away, go down a flight of stairs and see how you feel."
I hope he didn't hit his head on that railing that his hand slipped on.
I would like to hope he didn't as well. But yeah, it was a very shocking kind of like way for this to go. And I'm curious because there's a part of me that wonders where this is going to go, because I do agree that I'm like, I assume this is a way for him to miss it because they established in the chapter that there's kind of a secondary exam. So he'd have to kind of we had to resort to that one. But I wonder if, because this chapter showed it, we're also going to see Yuiga in the hospital. And this is where I'm not sure if we're going to do this, because the principal didn't really frame it like it's an issue. But I do wonder if we're going to examine Yuiga's sort of selfless nature at its most dangerous. Because I feel like that's maybe something that should have been expressed more in that scene with his dad. Is like, oh, I mean, this is very admirable of you, but this might be what leads to your death, is you neglecting your own health in favor of helping others. And I wonder if that's something that maybe we're going to touch upon, or at least examine in some way.
I guess it's possible. I think that was something that did get brought up the last time we had an arc that focused specifically on Yuiga, though. So I don't know if that necessarily needs to be driven home as hard, but it could go a lot of different ways, and I'm really looking forward to the next chapter to find out exactly what angle we go with here. So, all right, let's move on to Dr. Stone. This is chapter Z equals where is it? 121, Medusa's True Face. So, I think
Dr. Stone's been pretty slow recently.
It's been kind of, I don't know about this. I don't know about the direction things been going.
Sark's been kind of at a lull, kind of waiting for something to happen.
Yeah. God damn it.
We just need to say it about every series. Like, we're like, this thing's kind of at like a slow point right now.
I don't know, Chris. One Piece seems like it's kind of going slow right now.
Promised Neverland's really been losing me recently. I just feel like it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't hook me anymore.
My Hero Academia, I don't know about this. Mitama Security, it's fine.
Yeah, you know what? It's great. Keep it up.
So, a couple of things, of course, are still going on from the previous chapter. First thing that we touch on is Mozu fighting Kohaku after she was discovered. She is using her hidden weapon to fight him while he is, in proper armor and everything. And Mozu starts to taunt her a little bit, or at least, speak pridefully of himself. as they battle. He says, you must realize just how much stronger I am. The whole lot of you together could never beat me. And Kohaku's like, I knew how strong you were even before we started fighting, so shut the hell up. And he seems to catch her a little bit. I think that he knocks her weapon away with a strike. I think that's what happens in one panel. It's a little bit difficult to tell. And he proceeds to kind of continue his usual act of like, all I care about are, females' appearances and stuff. And she's like, you've got a cute face. Hey, what's your type, Kohaku? How about me? I'm stronger than strong. It's a really lame way of putting that.
Nick, I used to describe myself on dating websites that way as well. Now I'm starting to rethink it. You think I should stop leading with that? Hey, ladies, I'm stronger than strong. Also enjoy The Office and hiking. I'm like, why won't anyone match with me?
Kohaku's hair ornaments have also been knocked off of her head by this blow. So she takes a little bit of a breath, ties her hair up. She's going to tie her hair up and square up, Chris. Like my favorite underrated female wrestler. Anyway.
Now, I assume that's not ironic because Sonya Deville is actually extremely talented.
She's great.
That is one of the worst catchphrases in history,
It
though.
is.
So we could properly dunk on that because I imagine at some point they're like, we're going to make T-shirts out of this. Put your hair up and square up. Everyone's going to be saying it. Kids, dogs will start speaking to be like, where's your hair up and square up? And
I'm pretty sure that it was something that either she came up with or like someone she was just brainstorming with was like, hey, how about this? And it's like the only thing she's been able to come up with since then, because we can't all be like Ryback, Chris, and just be a catchphrase inventing machine where you make 20 lame catchphrases instead of one.
Hey, well, what about the best catchphrase machine of them all, Nick? The big dog. But not actually the big dog, because I realize now that's actually a wrestler in WWE. But the big dog, Brock Lesnar, and his trademark Brock Party. That they sold T-shirts for a ornament he held for 4 weeks. But back to the point. Not the manga. Back to the point of Sonya Deville. She's extremely talented, but it is a terrible, terrible catchphrase. And can we talk about T-shirts in WWE, Nick? Why are so many so bad? I want to buy T-shirts for my favorite wrestlers.
Don't get it.
And all
I
of them
honestly don't get it. There are so many wrestlers that are like, I wish I could support this person. Oh, all their T-shirts are super terrible looking.
Let me
and I have no fashion sense.
I really like the Revival. Let me go look up their shirt. Oh, it's bright yellow with the cartoonish image of them on the front. That's awesome. Can't wait to get that. No, I can't do it, Nick. No. How do I support them? Let them know that I'm not into flips, just fists.
I was a big fan of Cody Rhodes from like the first or second month that I was watching wrestling, and until he left WWE some 5 odd years later, he never had a good T-shirt. And never bought a single one.
There are so many wrestlers that you're like, man, it's like you pissed off the graphic design artist. Like you were Randy Orton in a fit of juvenile prankness. You decided to poop in somebody's purse, and now they just are holding it against you. And yeah, that's how a lot of wrestlers feel. Unfortunately.
Yeah. Anyway, Ginro dies in this chapter.
What? I never got to the end.
Before we get to that point, Kohaku has, instead of saying put your hair up and square up, she says that kind of strength that she values is strength of character. Someone who follows his ideals step by step and keeps hammering away however long it takes. That's the sort of man I'd fall for. That's definitely not Chip teasing her with Senku, let me tell you.
No, Nick, she could be talking about anybody. Maybe Magma. That kind of fits Magma. When you think about it. Follows his ideals a lot.
Mozu says, Your face is the only cute thing about you. So what? This fucking guy.
I wish
He's. You're ugly anyway. After flirting with her for 40 minutes
I wish
unsuccessfully.
some guy over in the science like, I don't know, I think her legs are still pretty nice. He's like, I was trying to speak more metaphorically. He was in a very serious moment here. He's like, I'm just calling it like I sees it. She got scams. He's like, could you be quiet now? We're trying to have a fight. It's very intense. People are about to die soon.
Mosey does the Stone Age equivalent of this girl hasn't been replying to my private messages, so I'm just going to call her ugly now. Anyway, Ipara was in the room with Ginro, was going to fuck him. Like, that was what was going to happen until Ginro got out the pineapple acid, I forget the name of the chemical, the knockout juice, and he saw the statue. And so Ibarra, still thinking that Ginrolina's a girl, is going to have to kill him now because there's a weird moment because, like, there were a lot of girls who've seen that statue. They were very bad, and these old bones don't relish the killing, but alas. So apparently he's just not very cautious whenever he brings girls up to be brought before the leader so he can fuck them in front of this statue. And they keep on looking behind this curtain, and he keeps on having to kill them. Ginro tries to get away, sees Kohaku, and is going to be like, all right, yes, I'm going to use my ultimate technique, not my problem. And he calls out to Kohaku for help, and she looks up at him and sees Ginro and tries to shout a warning. And Ibarra comes up and stabs him through the gut from behind. Very shocking image. I thought that, like, this was going to be a fake out or something like that. Like, there were ketchup packets under his clothes or something. No. Dude takes the claws on the tips of his fingers and with his giant ass hand stabs Ginro through the ribs, the solar plexus, the stomach, and the intestine. And Ginro falls bleeding to the ground. Yeah.
Oh, all right. You know, I didn't see this one coming a couple weeks ago.
So Kohaku abandons the fight with Mozu, rushes over to her friend, and is like, wow, yeah, you're going to die as soon as she gets a good look at his wounds. And Ginro starts mumbling something with his, presumably one of his pierced lungs. And Kohaku tries to kind of like, I guess, make herself calm down by kind of telling a joke and saying, like, hey, I know, you're gonna ask me to put you out of your misery, right? So that's, yeah, you're gonna run away from this, right? Like, no, come on. I mean, we're gonna find a way to save you. Instead, Ginro says, the master is a statue. Looks just like Soyuz, so he might be his. And so Kohaku calms down and says, you did a good job getting that information. And Ginro's like, well, I know there's no saving me, but I'm supposed to be a village guard. I'm a warrior, so I had to be cool at the very end. He says goodbye, but he doesn't say goodbye to Kohaku. He says goodbye to Kinro. Aww. But Kohaku gets a serious look on her face and says, you're right, Ginro, you are beyond help. There's only one thing I can do. Amaryllis runs up to the two of them, and Kohaku mutters something to her that we don't get to hear. And then Kohaku dashes back up the tree with Ginro in her arms, gets all the way up to the top of this hut that overlooks the entire village, and she starts bellowing out at the top of her lungs, "Hey, your master is actually..." And Ibarra immediately turns to all the guards and is like, "Hey, don't listen to her. The villain is trying to lie to you. So the master's special power will strike her now. So cover your eyes, or else you'll be turned to stone." And everyone does cover their eyes, including Amaryllis, although she's kind of like doing a little bit of peeking around the edge. And she's like, this has nothing to do with, witnessing the power firsthand. He just doesn't want them to see what the petrification weapon looks like. And Kagura, something like that, takes out the petrification device and tosses it high up into the air, right above Kohaku and Ginro. And Ginro realizes that this was a gambit on Kohaku's part, that she wanted them to use the weapon. And yep, Kohaku confirms that she needs them to be petrified because that's the only way to save Ginro's life, is to petrify him and then use the revival fluids that his wounds will be healed. And we get a full-on look at what the petrification device looks like. It is a bizarre glass Ouroboros kind of thing with like a Mobius strip that wraps around.
It looks like two Mobius strips linked together.
And it's tossed up into the air, and Ginro's like, "Oh, it looks kind of pretty." And Kohaku says, "I can really see it with my vision. Medusa's true face." And it's just like Senku thought. It's not some kind of magic or curse without rules. This Medusa is based on science. And the glass structure, or possibly metal structure, but it looks like it might be glass, of the device has all these little panels and wires and stuff that you can see. So you can see that, yeah, that is definitely a weird, intricate piece of technology that's been tossed into the air. And this aura comes out of it the same as we saw in Amaryllis's flashback. And now it's basically left to her. She's the only member remaining of the science team as we see Kohaku and Ginro start to get petrified and turn to stone. And but they say they go with a smile on their face because they're sure that their friends are going to save them. And that's the end of the chapter. So, really good chapter this week. Really kicked things up.
Yeah, I didn't see this coming, and
No.
maybe that's on me because I should have had more faith in Inagaki. Because the best thing I could always say about Ice Shield 21 is that he made the cast relevant. Like the whole cast, for the most part, got their things to do. It wasn't just a 2-character show or something like that. So, when they broke the teams apart, and you're like, oh, I wonder what Ginro is going to do in all of this because he's the one that's kind of involved here and stuff like that. Especially when he got to be made part of the harem team or whatever. You're like, I wonder what he's gonna do, and you're like, oh, he has this baller ass like moment where he gets killed, but he uses his last moments to tell the team an important piece of information, and then apologizes to his brother as he's dying, and then fucking Kohaku decides to make a giant heroic sacrifice on the faith that the heroes will win and they won't, they're going to be saved from the petrification. But it's such a baller ass move. It's executed really well with them jumping to the very top of this building and shouting it from there and being turned to stone, like as they're physically being turned to stone, saying like, okay, we're going to be fine because we're going to wait for Senku to save us because we have that much faith. And it's like, fuck, man, they executed that shit like a motherfucker. It's great.
It's really cool. And it does also make Kohaku per actions in the last couple of chapters out to be considerably more calculated, as opposed to just being like, fuck, I'm gonna fight this guy.
Oh, and I like other people in the chat are like, what about that one girl quarterback? Yes, I suppose she didn't get executed very well, but maybe she's in this series. Maybe Inagaki doesn't write.
She just like, they go inside of this cave and they see this girl who's been like perfectly preserved mid-pass.
And they're like, oh my god, look at that form. That's the most perfect pass I've ever seen. We need to unfreeze her because what the world needs right now is the perfect football quarterback.
We need the Tayo Alexander's #1 quarterback who was Hiruma's rival in that matchup.
It was right down to the wire. You never really knew who was going to get the... Remember all of her iconic techniques, like, I don't know, like a rose pass or some shit like that?
The one thing that we got to see her do was throw a perfect spiral. That was basically it.
It was very iconic, though. Really, like... And
anyway, she's the best quarterback ever. She's the best quarterback in Japan, which is why she did not make the team that went to America for the tournament.
Tough. There was such a run on really good quarterbacks. She would have been number 4. Well, maybe 5.
Well,
maybe 5.
Room.
Maybe after Marco.
Originally
I know he was the strong safety, but Marco was the 4th quarterback. Then her.
Well, because they brought Hiruma and Kid.
Aegon. Wasn't Aegon saying he was the 3rd?
Aegon was supposed to be like an all-rounder, basically.
Yeah.
I think that he was supposed to be like on defense in their lineup.
He was listed as a as a linebacker, but I thought he said, like, I remember there's a scene where they all get in the car and they talk about how quarterbacks usually win the MVP trophy. So Aegon was like, I'm going to win it because I'll prove to you guys I'm the best quarterback or some shit like that. It didn't matter whatsoever. But
everyone got their asses kicked by Clifford until they worked together, right? Clifford D. Lewis.
This is the name that strikes terror to your soul. Anyway,
great
much. Chapter.
Yes, it was. The Promised Neverland. Chapter 150. Vow of 700 Years. So last time, Gielin's men were getting carved the hell up by the Queen, and they exploded a bunch of suicide vests after she had cut them up, because that was the only way that they knew that they were going to do anything in the match. Not match, battle, whatever. It's not like this is a sanctioned fight for some fighting tournament. Anyway, there are still some of Gielin's followers left, all wearing their matching masks and stuff, and the Queen just says, "Truly ridiculous, hardly a scratch on my body." And then she realizes she's basically covered in chewing gum. The suicide bombs weren't just to explode all over her, they were to cover in adhesives so that her movement would be cut down significantly. And this is what they had been planning for the beginning. They knew that the royal family was on a completely different level. This was the only way they could possibly kill the Queen. So they had to stop her movement by doing this. And then, as the second part of this plan, they told Gielin, they're like, "Look, we're going to attack her head on, and she will slice our heads off. So when she does that, eat them and make us a part of you. Everyone has eaten various things for this revenge, to live, to win, and survive. At the end, please eat us. We are always with you, my lord. It was an honor to serve you." And Gielin stoops down, he picks up their heads, and his mouth gets really wide in order to fit all the heads in. He just kind of like doesn't chew. And so he does that. And they're like, "We will join together and kill the Queen." And the Queen is struggling around like,
"Stop it.
So sticky." And Gielin starts beating the shit out of her with like a baseball bat. I know it's not actually a baseball bat, but it sure as hell looks like one.
It's like a very ornate baseball bat. Like someone decided to like carve a tablecloth pattern into it.
Because he has to break her mask so that she'll lose her protection. And although the first blow looks like it breaks her neck, so maybe he should have just kept on hitting her with it instead of switching to a different plan. And he just keeps on going after her while she can't move, attacking until he can rip off her mask. And he thinks to himself, "You must die, Your Majesty. You must die and fall to hell for us, for all citizens." And when he's done beating her up, her mask has fallen off. We get a good look at her face, and she's got these weird. She's got like 3 eyes, and they're not actually, at least 3 eyes. There might be more. It's a little hard to tell, and they're not even like congruent. They're not symmetrical with each other. And after that, he takes out a sword and is just like, "Repent in hell." And we get this big full-page spread of him stabbing down with his sword, and all of the spirits of his followers are with him, driving forward in this one final blow. And then he's diced up into cubes.
Mm-hmm.
So that didn't work. He's cut the hell up. He falls over in many pieces. And the remaining members of the royalty are like, "Oh, Your Majesty, you did it, yay." And the Queen just kind of gets up and cracks her neck back into place and just says, "Oh, that was a bit tiring." And Gielin is on the ground with just his head looking up at her. And he just thinks to himself, "What just happened?" And she picks up his head and says, "I didn't think that you would get this far. And I'm pretty surprised. You did a good job surviving for 700 years, but you were foolish. You were able to survive. You should have stayed hidden in a mountain or valley instead of seeking revenge." And, she thinks about their whole thing, like they allowed us to live. We have the duty to attest to the truth. And she just says, that's absurd. Look, Gillen. And she points his head at all the corpses of his followers and says, justice doesn't always win. In fact, you're not on the side of justice anymore. You killed innocent young children, something you would have never forgiven before. And you call this justice laughable. You've become quite corrupt in the last 700 years, drowning in hatred. And while she's taunting him, Gielen's body slowly starts to come back together, and he's like, I've got to regenerate. And his few remaining followers rush forward, trying to buy some time so Gielen can regenerate, and she just immediately dispatches them as well. And he's like, I won't let you die in vain. I'm going to bring you. I'll just come back together. And she just says to himself, I know what you're thinking. Just a little bit more. But it's over, pitiful Gielen. And she puts him on the ground and steps her heel through his eye and kills him. And her main follower, her Grand Vizier or whatever, Givaudan, I think it was, something like that. He celebrates like, you guys are idiots, and he starts stepping on Gielen's corpse and stuff. And he's like, how dare you be so arrogant, you criminal, thinking that you could be a king. They, some of the remaining followers ask the queen if she wants a new mask, and she's like, I'm just hungry. And she gets set to devour Gielen's head, but then bullets hit it and cause her to have to retreat. And so everyone is shocked as a new figure emerges coming through the doors. And, it's one of Norman's generals, Zazie. And they're like, is this the mastermind? Wait, you're a human? And Zazie says his badass entrance line. So this was a cool chapter, wasn't it?
Yeah, I really, really like this. And I know some people are upset because Gielen kind of goes down, not like a punk, but he loses completely and utterly. And yeah. I think that was super important because this was like 4 chapters that was a buildup of Gielen to be like, hey, here's who this Gielen guy was. Here's why he and his clan are so slighted and so angry at the queen, and why they're willing to align with humans to bring her down. And here's some more context, just how much sacrifice has gone into it. And I think that's super important because they lose in a pretty huge way, and we as an audience, like, you feel bad because you're like, shit, I really wanted Gielen to win. I really wanted a big victory there, and you get a crushing defeat instead. And you have to remember that, like, after this is going to be the kids being involved. I guess they're teenagers now, and they never lose. Like, outside of like the big, like the 2 or 3 huge moments in the series, the kids pretty universally don't suffer huge crushing defeats. They're always pretty much shown to be pretty competent and skilled. So this was like a big moment to be like, oh, it's not going to be just as easy as it seems. Presumably before we get the kids who are going to actually succeed in, I don't know if it's Norman killing the queen or what exactly is going to happen, but I really appreciate that we got something that felt like a big loss for the heroes, even though Gielen wasn't truly, I guess, a hero or anything like that. I thought it was a right time to do that. It was really well executed. It didn't stay like, we didn't get like 7 months of Gielen or something like that. We got just the right amount of time to care about him and then to be sad that he lost.
Well, I like the way that it ended because I like that the queen points out, like, yeah, you're also an asshole, by the way. I mean, keep in mind that Gielen was very upfront with his followers about the fact that after they killed the queen, they were going to kill Norman and his friends too. And that was just going to be it. They were planning on ruling over the monster world and stuff. And yeah, they cared about the people of the demon world. They didn't care about the humans, though. There was never a point in any of the flashback or anything like that where they were like, hey, these kids have souls and stuff. Maybe we should, not be raising them as just cattle. No, never an issue at all whatsoever. So I like that she points out that you've done some really awful shit for the sake of this vengeance that you've dedicated yourselves to when you could have lived out your lives in safety. So the fact that you came here for this, one, you're not justified, and two, you were foolish to do this. So now suffer the consequences. You fucking killed him. We are also at the point in the story still where it's antagonists fighting antagonists. And it's important to have that context. Norman and company are not the villains, but they are antagonists. They are opposed to Emma's objective and her cause. And so it is also going to be a bad thing if they completely kill everyone here. It's bad if they kill the like very few remaining nobles that are left. So we're kind of at this point where we don't really want anyone to die. So it's basically, I think that you have to keep in mind that from this point forward, basically anyone who dies, it's still a bad thing. So.
No, I agree.
But yeah, really cool chapter. Like it.
Super satisfying. All right, let's move on then to Black Clover, page 220, visits. So last time, all the Black Bulls invaded, and they tried to kill Damashio, and then they were given a mission to go outside the kingdom to, basically they're exiled, but they need to find proof. So that's where this chapter is kind of all about. We see like some chattering from the peanut gallery that's like, oh, what are they doing? Oh, like there's some even keeled though. It makes sense because you see like a discussion even going on. People are like, well, the Wizard King's the one who said this, and the Wizard King would never do anything rash. And they're like, that's true. He always said, better to let a child starve out in the streets than to give them aid when they were your best friend's kid. That's actually one of his iconic quotes. It was on his gravestone before.
It's one of the things that like. Long after he's dead, they'll put up like a photograph of him with that quote next to it, and people will be like, yeah, I'll never forget the great wisdom of the Wizard King.
he was all about it. So we cut over, we presume that things kind of solve themselves, and Damashio goes to talk to the Wizard King, and it's just like, so you're just gonna handle everything in that form as well? Yeah, you're gonna deal with all the brigades and devil possessed boys. Like, yeah, well, I kind of thought this was a really good way to solve both of them, you know. And Dabashi was like, granting forgiveness means taking responsibility. The kingdom can't bear the responsibility. You can't bear it. And he's like, well, I didn't forgive them. I'm leaving it in their hands. They're gonna solve it. It's all about trusting them. And he's like, and I'm sure one day your scales will tip in the favor of Asta's group. And Dabashi was like, fuck off. Fuck you.
I'm still Sun Damnatio.
I'm still when his name was what is the character from Fairy Tail? I can never remember their fucking names. He would change names. Whatever.
Oh.
Dickhead who was a Magic Council guy who became good. Right. He's like, yeah, you know what? I don't really know if what you're saying, that the kingdom goes under.
Was that it?
What was it?
Mistgun? Was that it?
Wasn't that what fake Gerard's name was when he was in the guild?
Oh, I was thinking of the other character in Fairy Tail who changed their name, right?
God, hold on. No, you know what? I'm the one recapping. So
that's the guy who teleported them, right? And he he did the fake out where it looked like Makarao was going to die. No, I got him to safety, no consequences.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember like the other characters, and there's so fucking many of them that I can't even begin to try to remember. Other members, Gajeel, Juvia. Oh my god, there's so many. The Rajan fucking gang. Mest Grider. But what was his original fucking name? Doran Bolt. That's it. Doran Bolt originally, and then became Mest. So he's still Doran Bolt at this point, Damnatio. When he changes, he's gonna get a much cooler name than
anyway,
Damnatio.
now that we've established that more in detail.
Well, I want to note, he'll get a cooler name than Damnatio in the future, which I can't understand how he possibly can. It's the coolest name. So yeah, he's like, all right, well, whatever. If he doesn't do it, then I will render judgment on this, for the sake of this kingdom, no matter what. And then
says it a little bit intimidating because he's like, I'll render judgment on the boy. I will even pass judgment on you.
Yeah. So he's pretty strict about it. Marks comes in, has a moment where he's like, "Oh, you're so alive. I'm very happy." Oh, wow. You know what? So as I was reading this chapter, it's like I forgot kind of what happened in this chapter. And I got to this page, I'm like, now I remember this chapter. So,
this whole little conversation between Marks and Julius. I mean, this chapter starts out really well. I think there's a little conversation. There's the conversation between Damnatio and Julius that kind of goes away to establishing what their relationship is at this point. That Damnatio, yeah, he's a jerk, but he seems to get along relatively well with the Wizard King, and he's willing to go along with him even if he disagrees with him. He kind of has that faith in him. And then we get Marks coming up, and it's like, oh, this was something that you didn't need to do, but I mean, Marks was the most distraught person when Julius seemingly died. And we get this little reunion between the two of them. And we see that, hey, they actually do really care about each other, even though Julius was always kind of frustrating Marks by being, flippant with his duties and stuff. And Marks is actually like crying because he sees him and they actually have a little embrace. And it's really nice.
Yeah, there is a sweet moment there.
And the rest of the chapter happens.
We cut over to Charlotte, I want to say her name is. I get it confused with the elf name that was absurdly similar, like comedically so. So Charlotte is resting in bed because it's very taxing to have an elf take over your body. And she's apologized to Soul because she's like, I couldn't protect my body from being stolen because only has those powers. Only is strong enough to overcome that. And Soul's like, no, don't worry about it. It wasn't your fault. In fact, I'm the one who was useless. In fact, it was the Black Bulls captain. He had to save you. And Charlotte gets really blushed and frustrated because she's like, oh no, was that actually not a dream? Oh, we were so close at points, and what actually happened then? And then she's like, oh hey, yeah, by the way, Yami's here. And she's like, oh, because she's thinking, has Yami picked up on my own feelings? So she's like, Yami, what are you doing here? And she's like, oh no, emotionally, I'm in no shape to be in the same room as him. Soul, you must get him out of here. You be the man-hating character you are and tell him to fuck off. And she's like, you did save us all, so I guess you can hang out. He's like, no. He's like, oh, you okay? She's like, oh my god, what am I doing? What kind of face am I making? What's happening? And Yami's like, hey, don't push yourself, You've always been kind of stubborn. You caused a lot of trouble, woman. Anyway, there's something I've been meaning to ask you about. She's like, oh, ask me about? He wants to ask me something? Oh my god, it can't possibly be. He's like, that thing you said? She's like, when you were under that spell, and they're clearly thinking of two different instances, and he's like, I want you to give me the details of that thing of yours. Like I figured, is it? And Charlotte begins screaming as Yami tries to say, do you have a forbidden magic curse? And she screams. And she screams, and she runs out of the room screaming, and she screams down the hall, runs out of the mansion screaming, runs down the street screaming, crashes into a house screaming, grabs the baby while screaming, runs back, brings the baby back while screaming, runs across the water screaming, and runs straight out of the kingdom screaming. That's the chapter.
This was so stupid. Like, I could not believe how dumb this was. Like, look, the beginning of this chapter establishes, hey, occasionally Black Clover has some moments that are like, oh, this is a nice little establishment of what these characters feel about each other. This one continues the lame jokes that compose in a character's entire personality. Two, what the fuck is this? Like, you've spent 4 pages of her just going, ah! And that's it. I'm sure that there are people who find this to be absolutely hilarious.
This is like a Saturday morning cartoon. Where it's like she runs into a building and accidentally picks up a baby and has to run it back. It's very cartoonish, which isn't necessarily a problem. I'm sure this is going to make a very funny reaction GIF when this actually makes it into the anime and you can just GIF the whole thing. But it kind of falls into that thing where I find characters in Black Clover are all too similar. And they all kind of have the same reaction to everything.
Yeah.
where I'm like, oh, okay. So Charlotte's reaction to stuff is to also be silly and scream a lot. And it's like, yeah, I mean, that's not really whatever. I guess it's just, I don't know. It's not for me. That's really all there is to say. That's the chapter.
Yeah. Yeah.
One Piece, Nick. Let's talk
One Piece. Chapter 955. Enma. So there's an odd little establishing moment that explains, by the way, Hiyori's not going to be part of the meeting, even though she's an important figure, and she could, be reunited with a bunch of people who miss her a lot. And she's like, I'm worried for Otoko, so I'm not going to meet the others because sentiment is forbidden before a battle. Bye. Mm-hmm. And that's why she's not present for the meeting. Okay. So, Kawamatsu and Zoro go to meet up with everyone at the big meeting, the planning session, and they're like, "Wait a minute, you saw Lady Hiyori, and that she's completely grown up and knows how to talk properly, and she's not a weird tomboy anymore." And it was like, "Oh, okay, I guess Hiyori was 100% different from when she was a kid now." And Momonosuke's memories of his then younger sister were of her doing a freaking missile drop kick to his face. So, yeah, there you go.
That's how it be. That's what she was like,
I do like that Momonosuke tries to give wise insight to Zoro about the way that his sister is. She's rough and tumble, but at her core she is soft and quick to tears. And Zoro's like, listen, she's 18 years older than you now. So all that happens. Sanji tries to kind of get close to Momonosuke because he's like, oh, that hot lady's your sister. Hey, buddy. Because he's being a real creeper about it. Swords are given out. They are returning the sword that, of course, Zoro had. And in return, he is getting the sword that was promised to him, Enma. And Momonosuke is being imparted with the other of the two swords, Ame no Habakiri, but he's like, yeah, I'm not ready yet. I'm not afraid. You just hold on to it. And Zoro, of course, is given Enma, and the smith says, hey, just a little warning. There's only one man who has ever tamed that sword, and that was Kozuki Oden. So here, give it a try here. Cut down one of those trees to test its edge. Kinemon says, hey, Zoro, I mean, I don't think you should. And he just cuts off the entire edge of the cliff that when he tries to cut the tree. I'm glad that there was nobody over there because
it would have been a rough time.
That's a large, you can see the tree line that is gone from the island now as a result of how much of the coast he sliced off. And everyone reacts in total shock. And then they look over at Zoro and his arm is shriveled up and blackened from one swing of this sword. It's taken a whole ton out of him. It looks like armament hockey kind of, but it's drained the life out of him in order to cause it, basically.
Yeah, it is armament hockey. It looks like it drained his strength. Because he says, give it back, and you see his arm pops back up into it.
The armament hockey has gathered into the blade of the sword, and he has to pull it back into himself.
It was specified at some point that's potentially how a blade becomes black, isn't it? That if you put so much armament hockey into it, it turns it black eventually?
They do say something along those lines in this chapter, that over time, the color of the swords can change with their use. So, and they say it's going to use the wielder's Ryuo on its own, and it slices more than needed. A normal swordsman would be a complete husk right now. So good job. Anyway, do you want a different sword? And he's like, nope, I'll take this one, and I'm going to get used to this, and that means I'll have gotten a lot stronger, which amuses Kawamatsu. And then we get another montage, Chris. One was not enough this week. We have to get more cutting ahead through the days leading up to the village raid. So, There's a couple of different things that happen. More men are being gathered. They only have 4,000 people going up against 30,000 from the Animal Kingdom pirates. As of course, Kaido's forces are also gathering. Frankie is working on the ships with a bunch of people, and he says, "We've got to be able to ferry 100,000 men." And there's a guy who's just like, "We're not going to have that many." And Frankie's like, "Well, there's nothing wrong with aiming high." And the guy's like, "It'll be a waste of work." All right, let's make a bet. How many people are we going to get? So Frankie's not going to be the reason that their mission fails, basically. Yeah. So Luffy is still training along with Hyogoro, trying to be able to work on the penetrating blows. There's a little bit of a conversation that takes place between Zoro and Momonosuke regarding the word Sunachi. Mm-hmm.
It's like Nakama, Mitnick. It means friends.
Yeah.
But it's untranslatable.
Zoro says, "It's something the old guy in my village told me. I've never said it myself before. Don't say Sunachi." So, Chopper shows up with Mitama. A whole bunch of people are gathering together. We do cut around to see how like the message is being carried around to people. Like certain random people are still trying to make their way to join Kinemon's main force. There are a bunch of prisoners that are behind bars, and I love that there's a part where one of them, in order to make it back to Kinemon, is just like, "Hey, guard, it's the day of the festival, right? We want to take part." And they're like, "No, damn it, foiled. They won't let us out in order to join the rebellion army. Damn it." More cutting around between stuff, conversation taking place between people, and eventually we get to a point where it's the day before the raid, and so Kinemon sets out with the other Red Scabbards and Momonosuke. They're going to go somewhere. I don't think we actually know exactly where they're headed to yet. We also see that Hiyori has met up with Otoko, and they are with Wanda and with Carrot, and they are praying before graves for Pedro and Yasuye. This guy who's with them?
On which page?
On page 15. Wanda and Carrot.
Oh, that's Pedro. They're thinking about Pedro.
Yeah, but there's someone with them who looks like that.
Are you thinking Dogstorm?
On the panel above, where you just see the two graves, and then there's Hiyori and Otoko in the foreground, and then you see Carrot's ears, and then there's a tall person next to Carrot. That looks like the bearded person that you see the shot of next to Carrot on the below panels.
Let me see. I'm trying to match it up. I don't know. There's the zoom. All right. No, hold on. Oh, everything changed. Oh God.
I've destroyed you.
I'll be honest. That looks like Pedro.
It does. That's why I asked you about it.
I know they did this gag before, though. I feel like they wouldn't do it again. People are saying he's another one of the Musketeers.
That does make sense.
Just not one of the ones.
Because he does. Especially because like I know that that's not Pedro. Even if I didn't know Pedro was dead, like he looks just different enough for me to know he's not Pedro. So anyway,
people are saying Sicilian. I don't remember him, but sure.
There's too many characters in this arc.
Well, there were a lot of characters of that. It's tough to remember them all.
Right. Zoro's approached, asking if, "Hey, is Emma doing all right? Oh, and also, you wield Kitetsu III. I also crafted that blade. It works much like a cursed blade does, and the weak cannot control it. The most likely reason it feels familiar to you must be some twist of fate, for the white blade Wado Ichimonji and Enma were both crafted by the same man, the blacksmith Shimotsuki Kozaburo. He broke the laws and left this land over 50 years ago. Perhaps Lady Hiyori recognized your sword and gave you her father's memento. Enma is not yet forged into a black blade. Depending on you, its rank might yet be raised. Some more stuff involving Zoro and the potential for it to get stronger. So, hey, it's finally happening. It only took us to the end of Act 2 of 3 in order to get there, but it's happening. Zoro's getting stuff in the samurai arc.
I've been hearing people speculate that the Kozabordo is connected to Zoro and potentially is even Zoro's master, which would explain some things, like why was one of the strongest swords in the world in some backwoods, like East Blue Village. But the timeline doesn't match up. I mean, I guess you could rationalize it because Zoro's teacher didn't look 50 and had like a pretty young daughter back in the flashback. So it may be connected. I don't know if the timeline perfectly matches up, but I would love that Zoro's mentor and teacher plays into things somehow, because it is
his daughter who fell down some stairs and became grievously injured.
you really have to ask yourself sometimes. You're like, man, One Piece's flashbacks are so solid. Zoro's is the bottom though. Zoro's is like the one where it's like, we're gonna be swordsmen one day. Like, I don't know if I'm going to, because I'm gonna grow breasts, and once you grow breasts, you can't be a swordsman. And that's something that's never been continued by any character we've ever met in the series. And then she fell down the stairs and died. You're like, she's just kind of a klutz. Maybe that's why she wasn't going to be a good swordsman.
Imagine
so fucking clumsy, she just fell downstairs.
They're training, and she's like, one day I'm going to be a great swordsman, Zoro.
They're like, oh no, that's not what we meant. She can have breasts and be a swordsman, but once you grow breasts, you can't see stairs. Like, she's like, where? I thought there were stairs in my household, but these giant breasts are blocking my line of
It was our greatest failure to have her room be on the second floor. We should have kept her at ground level so she never had to deal with them.
The master's like, oh, the curse of swords women. Oh, I'd heard about it in legends, but
why didn't you have her like bind her breast or something like that? You could do that.
He's like, no, there's no way to stop the curse of the breast from tackling the swords. Like Final Destination, they would get her one way or another.
It's like, you see like a swordswoman like training, and occasionally she'll like stumble and look like she's gonna chop her limb off, and she's like, oh, okay, I'm fine. And she like sheathes her blade very safely, like goes into the next room. A bunch of like possible kitchen hazards don't happen. She's like, all right, that's enough of that. Had a nice long day. It's time to get some rest and prepare for tomorrow. And she goes to sleep, and her breasts flop up and smother her.
Like, if you watch Final Destination, there's like the first time it kills somebody, it actually shows like the water receding. It's the only time like in those movies they ever acknowledge that death has an actual presence on the world. Right. It's manipulate things.
Until like the eighth movie where he just shows up and he's a guy in a suit.
He's like, hey guys, it's me. Like, that's what like her breasts like gain life, and they're just like, you've been taking too long. Oh!
All right. And that's basically it. We see Luffy has seemingly progressed in his training further. He manages to strike a tree without actually touching it and cause tremendous damage to it. And he's like, "Hey, just you wait, Kaido." And we see that that Orochi has received some sort of a report. He's like, as long as I have this information, that is enough. A switch from Habu Port to Tokage Port. Kozuki Hiyori, still alive somewhere in the north. And we see Law is on the move. That's it. We don't see what he's doing. We just see his face. Law's there. And finally, the shamisen player returns as she plays, and we head into the final act. So the curtains close on Act 2, and the final act is about to begin. And so things are probably going to pick up next chapter. So
it's super exciting, but I need to tell everyone a story. So I became aware of this chapter when we recorded Weekly Manga Recap last week. I woke up the next morning, and this is a rarity that rarely happens. I went to Twitter, and the newest One Piece chapter was trending. like One Piece 955, hashtag One Piece 955 was trending. And I was like, this is weird. Now, I'm sure it was just trending for me because a lot of people in, I guess, like that sphere. But I was like, that's weird. I've never seen a chapter trend before. And I was really curious. I was like, I wonder
what happened.
What does this mean? Like something huge must happen. So I haven't read spoilers for One Piece in years. Probably coming up close on maybe like 8 years now. But ever since Jump went simulpub.
Right.
So there was a real moment.
You can wait another 2 days for the official chapter to drop.
There was a real moment where I was like, I'm not going to read the I'm not going to read the scan later chapters, but I was like, I might read the spoiler because something pretty huge must happen. And I was like, I don't know. And then Jump published something that was like, hey, chapters are coming out tomorrow. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to resist. I'm going to hold off. So I woke up Friday. I saw
all right, One Piece, let's do this.
I opened up that chapter because I clicked the trending topic and I heard people talk about it. Like Zoro fans are going to go nuts in this chapter. I expected Zoro to have like cut fucking like Odin in half or whoever the bad guy is.
Just like accidentally kills the Shogun and that's the end of the arc.
Or like something like he cuts Kaido in half or something like that. Something insane. Or like a character returns or something absolutely mind-blowing. And I read it and I was like, it's okay. It's kind of exciting, I guess.
I was going to say, after we covered the chapter there, like, I don't see anything happening that would be huge enough to cause tremendous reaction.
Like, I mean, it's exciting, and I get why people who like Zoro are excited, because Zoro got a pretty significant power upgrade, and it looked cool. And there's the potential that maybe this ties into his backstory in some way, or that there's more to kind of discover about him. I know there's the whole thing that Orochi knows the plan essentially, so there's some drama there. We get little teases here and there. There's cool stuff, and this is the end of Act 2, which feels like a pretty big moment in this arc. But I really built myself up in my mind thinking something insane was going to happen in this chapter. I was like, it's trending. This never happens. Something absurd must happen. And I was kind of brought down to earth very quickly. I was like, I guess that was pretty cool, I suppose.
Oh, well.
Sorry, Chris. Chapter. I still think this is a very good chapter. This is very cool. I'm just not particularly sure why this was the one to trend.
I guess you can never predict the reactions of a fandom, Chris.
Nick, I'm starting to think Twitter's not for me. Maybe it's just full of people who get my hype set up too much, you know?
Well, guys, that's going to do it for a week of Manga Recap this week. So let's name our favorites. Favorite series and MVP, Chris.
Favorite series I'm going to give to We Never Learned this week. I think We Never Learned really got me excited. I can't wait to find out what happens next week, which is not really something We Never Learned does that frequently, but it absolutely, like, when that end to it, like, just kind of, shocked me, where I was like, holy crap, I can't. It was like a moment. It was like watching a child get killed or something. Like, oh my goodness, is he okay? Like, you really start asking questions about yourself. So I really enjoyed We Never Learned this week.
My favorite series this week is going to be Dr. Stone. I just thought it was an incredible chapter from start to finish. Loved seeing that the two main characters were actually doing something really useful, and it took a direction that I was not expecting. It's nice that the series feels like it can still have stakes and consequences, despite the fact that we know that everyone's going to live in the end. There can still be these kind of huge speed bumps that come up along the way. So,
and my MVP I'm going to give to Charlotte, because it was really funny that she ran for 4 straight chapter. No, I'm going to give it to Kohaku. Kohaku had a really cool moment. I love that kind of heroic sacrifice. I love how she thought on her feet really quickly. It was a really cool moment for her and Genro.
And I'm going to give mine to Marks in Black Clover, because, hey, that part of Black Clover was actually good. If it had maintained that level of quality at the beginning all throughout it, I might have actually potentially considered giving it my favorite chapter of the week. I can't say for sure, because Dr. Stone was really good, but I did actually really like Black Clover for the first third of the chapter. It's just that it went off a goddamn cliff by the end of it.
It's worth noting Dr. Stone was the audience favorite, and then their MVP almost universally was either Ginro or Kohaku across the board.
That's totally understandable.
So Ginro was the one who won, but it's worth noting Kohaku was pretty much every other vote that wasn't Ginro.
Totally understandable. Okay, guys, that is going to do it for Weekly Manga Recap this week. Thank you guys for joining us here on twitch.tv/RollT, smashcast.tv/RollT. We tend to record the show Wednesdays sometime around 7:30 or 8 p.m. Eastern time, but stay updated on exactly when we're going to start the show if we need to change things up. You can follow us on Twitter at the Boomar Podcast is the official podcast account, at RollT, at Nick F. Time are your hosts. You can check out our past episodes on YouTube, on iTunes, on weeklymangarecap.podbean.com. Be sure to leave a subscription, comment, rating, all that good stuff. It helps out the algorithm, helps us rise to the top of the hobby section and dethrone the woodworkers. If you would like to send us feedback, if you'd like to ask us questions, if you would like to check out the Ninja X3i moderated spreadsheet where they go through stuff that we are covering, recommendations that we've been given, if you want to chime in on those, year-end supplemental awards that we'll go over in December, all that kind of stuff is tracked in that spreadsheet. And there's also a bunch of other stuff happening on our Discord server that you can participate in the conversation in as well. Special thanks go out to our Patreon supporters. You guys allow us to create all sorts of fun bonus content for you guys to enjoy. Special thanks as well to Steve Man, our title card artist, Infamous Plan for the stuff you do, Milo Jack Stillis, check out his SoundCloud, Winsleydale Cheddar, youtube.com/Winsleydale Cheddar. The last two made the opening sequence for Weekly Manga Recap. Thanks, guys. All right, next week is the last episode of September, which means it is time. It's time for the Sadistic September review. Do not miss it next week, because if you miss it, then all of my sacrifice and suffering was for nothing.
I was going to say, I was like, yeah, you got to make it next week, or otherwise Nick read it all for no reason. Look at it to his eyes. You can
Kodomo no Jikan review coming. If Nick doesn't devolve into insanity by then.
I was gonna say, is it really a review?
No.
Nick, don't tip your hand now. What if you, audience? We might really love this series.
I'm going to. I will cover it to the extent that I can manage, and I am going to have read the entire thing. This is not going to be like, oh, it's gross, and it will be done in 10 minutes. I will cover every single point that I can think of that deserves coverage. And unbelievably, the pedo bait kiddie porn series has more to hate about it than just 8-year-old fan service.
All right. Well, stick time. Hey, Nick, save something for next week, you know?
I will.
Catch you guys next time.
Bye.